Okay, I went through this whole thing and recorded a video, but I didn't have my microphone activated, so none of what I said got recorded. So I'm going to try this.
All right, so to show you the process.
So this is bringing minis in.
Last B
this is in Blender.
Import.
I'm going to import OBJ,
which is IO, which I usually do by keyboard just to make it quicker.
And I was doing a set of monster for each letter.
Pull them in.
So this is my last B. And you can delete the cube. That was from the old system because I needed that cube in order to bring the color in.
You could leave it, but there's no reason for it to be there.
The material, I like to clean up the name, but it's not necessary.
Clean that up.
Just
no need to
being
do that,
anal.
But it's just anal.
You want to, in the texture, come into the base color.
Click into your texture. And then I click in here.
Copy the hex value.
Color.
And then change this to pull the texture from an image.
Now this purple.
Now, because I was doing a bunch of these, I've already got this text texture image out there.
That purple won't hurt anything because it's not going to stick.
You want to change the foreground color in
Image Editor,
Paint mode.
Click into
change the
foreground color,
paste in your value, your hex value, and then click to paint that over your image. This is a 1x1 pixel image that I'm using just to bring the color into TaleSpire.
My radius is 50.
Now my paintbrush is 50 pixels, which is way bigger than it needs to be to paint this single pixel.
Just overkill.
Now you need to save the image, and I put it into the same model folder.
The model folder.
And I just call it text.png. So that I don't need to rename it for each model.
Take my word for it.
And then you can export FBX.
Now I have
Now it's going to come in with the file name of your last export.
This is going
you
to
always want to change
file that I saved.
You could copy the name of your model and then paste it in, or just retype it.
Because that'll prevent typos.
And it'll remember your export folder as long as you keep Blender open.
It's going to save your
path mode needs to be copy, and you need to activate the icon next to it. Limit to selected objects, which is the only one I've got.
The only thing in there, but if I had the cube still, I'd have my model selected. For some reason I can't scroll down.
It'll do your active selected object if you don't, and you want to apply transform.
And then in
Unity, your folders will start out empty here.
For my
so the icon, you can see that it's got nothing in it.
Textures.
You want to,
you can create
in your mesh folder,
you
click
your browser here. Let's see.
Saying here.
Projects, Monsters B, Assets, Content.
Just showing those folders as they exist because you can.
Now, this mesh and texture I could delete.
Create the folder structure outside of Unity and then come in and do things. Now, these material, mesh, and texture are what you create for each model.
Okay. Now I've already
and
brought
so
in
my base content ones weren't needed and I deleted them.
128 by 128.
Your portrait is 128 by 128 PNG.
See it anywhere. 128 by 128. My info text file.
And your info text file is just text.
And those I
don't believe those names are case sensitive because I've done it both ways, but I prefer the capital.
That does it.
In your mesh folder, right click,
so I'm going to import
something or other asset.
So right click,
so import new asset
in the mesh folder.
And this will remember the last place that you were.
FBX.
So if you're importing a bunch, you can just import. But as soon as you start doing textures and materials, it's going to mess with the folder that it remembers.
But
in the model, or read only, or read write,
I mean. Also going to look that way. You want to
your
read right on the mesh, rig,
thumbnail image
animation,
is very
import,
likely
so
to have a wrong
effectively none.
orientation. Let me pause. And that doesn't matter. So that he looks like he's facing up, that's perfectly fine.
It's also going to look that way.
So yeah, mark the model as read write. The rig is none. The animation is don't import animations.
So effectively
and material,
none.
you want to do these in
This
order,
you wanna
top
do
down.
in order.
So you want to do textures,
So you want to bring in textures,
and this will be in the folder where you just
into the folder you were just in. So it's up
imported
one,
your mesh.
and
So you
textures,
go up
I
one
usually hit
folder
enter
into
here just to
texture,
find it, and then
select. Into material, up one folder, material,
double click to go
select.
in, but it just saves my mouse hand an extra click.
And then
And so
drag
that's
your
all
mesh.
set. This auto applies when you, I think when you bring in the texture.
Saying here.
If you did it right, your folders
So,
here will
yeah,
look
you can
filled
see
in
that the
now.
folders
I
are
don't
filled
have an
in now
unfilled
because
in
they've
one
got
anymore to show you,
contents. Drag your mesh into the scene.
but
Now, when you drag a mesh up, at first it can give you like a no symbol, the red circle with a line slash through it. If you move left or right, that'll usually clear up and let you drop it in. When you first drop in a mesh, it'll show up white. And I'll show you why they turn blue in a second here.
into the scene, and then drag him from your scene down onto the main folder
I think
for
I already
that
grabbed.
project.
Um,
You want an original prefab.
when you
hit enter. Now
you drag
they're
it
all
up
in
into
here.
the
You
scene,
can
it'll
come
show up
here
here
and
white.
delete them.
Drag it down onto your model folder
Now
and
I should have showed you.
create prefab,
It
which was
doesn't
that
hurt
pop-up.
anything that they're all there. They can all be a big mess, as long as they're on 0.000.
Now,
and
I
scale
leave a bunch of
111,
models in here.
you're
It doesn't matter. As long as they're at position 000, scale
I'll leave
111,
the two
you're
there
good.
just because, to show that that's not going to create a problem.
And so you can delete them from there just to clean it up.
So when you
but
drag it,
it doesn't
when you
matter.
drag your mesh into the scene, it's going to be white. When you drag
So yeah, I'm saying you drop your
from the
mesh up
scene
there and
down
then
to
you
here
drag
to
it down
create
here.
your
It'll turn
prefab,
blue when you
it's gonna
create your
turn blue.
prefab. You rename your prefab
you can click in here,
and
do
put a
home,
prefix of
put
your initials or something that
or whatever
identifies you.
identifier.
Because in
Now I
TaleSpire, if you've
Control
got
A,
multiple
Control C to select all and copy.
add-on
Now,
modules
if you come
that
into
have
here,
the
you can
same
also click
name
back in and then copy
of
because
an
I'm gonna
object,
highlight.
they're going to complain and fight each other.
Come down to AssetBundle,
Come to AssetBundle, new,
paste,
and paste in
I
that
like to hit
value.
enter. I don't think it does anything.
A lot of times it won't let you type
Click
when
over
you do
portrait,
new.
assign it
Sometimes
to
it
that.
will, sometimes it won't. And so it's just
AssetBundle.
better to copy paste into
And
it.
if you do them in alphabetical order,
It's going to
it's always
auto
gonna be at the
lowercase
bottom.
everything, but that's fine.
Come up
Now,
here.
for your portrait, you want to assign it to the bundle, and then you want to set
Change your
compression to none and read write.
Right. Apply.
Apply.
Now, on
If
my
you
mesh,
don't
I
apply,
can
you're going to
go
get a
through and
pop-up
quick
that you'll see later.
model, read write, and it's nice that they're both underneath the first drop down essentially. Animation or rig none, animation don't import,
Walking through these
and then
again,
materials, textures, and
spelling them out. So in
so
here,
set
now
him.
I've
Come to info.
done the one. So this one you need to,
I can
let's speak a little clearer. So I've assigned the portrait to the asset bundle, assigned the info to the asset bundle, and then these
jumped around
three
a little bit,
folders
made it
you
confusing.
can select
Hopefully not too
together and
confusing.
assign to the asset bundle.
Okay. Now
Now,
you
the
can highlight the three
files
folders and
inside
do
of
it.
the folders
You can't highlight
will
everything
not
'cause
get
it'll go away.
assigned,
And I don't.
but that's okay. Now, what I'm showing here is when you select multiple things, that asset bundle piece disappears. So you can't do it. You got to do
You can even highlight
these
the two
three
of these.
files individual,
So you got to do your
and
portrait
then
separate,
the three
do
folders
your
you can do
info
together.
separate, and the three folders you can do all at once. Now that everything is set, now if you come into these
And once you've got that
file-
all
or
set,
these folders,
as I'm
these are
showing
not
that the
set,
file inside is
that's
not
okay.
assigned. You can assign it, it
can
won't
set
hurt
them, it
anything,
won't hurt anything,
but you don't need
but
to.
it's not necessary.
So then you
I
can
can
right-click,
right-click.
build asset bundles.
Now, You don't want to be in the folder
And
assets.
showing here in the assets,
The first
asset
time that
bundle says
you
folder. It's going to create when you do that.
Try that again. Build asset bundles. It will create this asset bundles folder, and it'll put your stuff under there. You don't want to be
Now, you
in
don't
the
want to
folder
be
under there.
in that folder
and a lot of
structure
times
when you do it, because it's going to create
I
this
like to
custom
just
data.
delete minis.
Now
That
you
way,
can go
when
in
I
there
build
and tell it
assets,
to
I
delete the
know they're
minis
building
folder
fresh.
or even the custom data folder.
Sometimes if the file
And when
already
you
exists, it
build
won't
asset bundle,
do it.
it's going to create all that again.
It'll leave the old file, especially if you're underneath the
But I
folders.
believe that it doesn't appreciate it if
within
you're
Explorer.
in that
So
folder
now
when
I
you're
come in
doing it.
here, I've got minis, and I'll go into bullet.
And within each
And
of
I've got
these,
the
you're
one
going to have
file.
your
If you
bundle.
have a
That's the file that you
.meta
need to
file,
copy
like this.
to that
With your
R2modman
model,
folder, which
check
we'll get
your
to
date
momentarily.
stamps, because there's a chance it did not build the actual bundle file.
But you can delete these and then
Now,
rebuild the bundle, and it'll rebuild them.
up here
So this
in
plugins folder,
Monster V, you want to
unregister.
the first time
Gotta
that
run
you
that
run
batch file.
R2modman TaleSpire with your files in here, it will
Which I will
build
do
them- it'll
eventually.
rename it to assets.
I was talking
and
about
it'll
something.
build this unregistered file. So I want
But
to
when you run
unregister,
R2modman,
which puts it back to
it's going to
custom
rename this custom data to assets.
data. My minis,
And that
and then
unregister will
you would
put it back to
ooh,
custom
why
data
did it
so
do
you can
that?
drop your files in.
I'm not sure why.
Now, any file
Oh,
in this asset bundles is underneath,
it might
Unity,
have done that because
and so Unity will come and create this meta file.
Files out in the structure, it'll build this meta file. I'm just not used to seeing them unless I
Now,
tried to
I've
rerun.
got batch files to copy
Alright,
the
so
bundled files
you would want to
to
copy each
this
file
custom
into
data
here.
minis folder.
I will not do that because I built a batch file. to
This
copy
copy to B is my monster
do it.
B. And it'll copy all of them into
Come
here.
out of that
Now,
because if
you
you're
need to be
in
out of that.
custom data, and then actually I should come
I think
further
you're
out
okay at the plugins level,
out
but
here
usually
where
I
you're
go up to
looking
where
at
I'm looking at plugins,
because
and
when
then you can run
R2modman
R2modman,
runs,
and it
it's
will
gonna rename
register
that
the
custom
bundle,
data
rename it to
to
assets instead of custom data.
and it'll build that unregister file because it's registering everything with TaleSpire. But I like having everything individual. Okay, so these are my B creatures.
Got my B models here. So space O. We'll pop this up.
E.
Now my monsters here are
And this
not in
one,
order,
they come up in
which
a
made
weird
it a lot
order.
harder to figure out which ones I didn't put up yet.
So
I'm not
there's a
quite
nice
sure
way to
why
figure
they're
out
not
what's
in an
going
order.
on there. Because I'll come up here and do it this way.
And so I actually pull up my list here
I moved some of these already.
because
Everything
Bone
after
Claw
Bone
was the
Claw is
last
what
one that I
want.
did. And so I paste them back into this folder so I know which ones I need to pull up.
You are not a bone devil.
And I fumble around a little bit.
That's going to be difficult for me to figure out here.
But as you can see, if you
Nope.
really went in to paint each model, they would look a
This
little
is
nicer.
Basilisk,
But
Behemoth,
even just doing
Bodak,
a solid color and having
Black
different colors for
Pudding,
different models
Dragon,
works pretty nice.
remember what you are. kind of wish it showed the name.
I should probably just skip ahead. Because I take a moment figuring out which ones, and I do a lot of accidental right clicks. Fix my platform to tidy it up.
Get out of there.
Okay.
You can't be in there and then do these. Plugins.
And so then I show
assets.
that it's
Instead
assets,
of,
and it's got the unregistered batch file there.
create a new.
And then I create a new one for Monster C. And
think
I could go
don't have
create
it
the
here.
structure underneath,
My copy
but
too will
I have
create
the
the
batch
structure
file do that
underneath.
for me
Unity.
because I'm doing multiple models.
My do it C
Now,
here
do it C is going to build the
my
project
project.
structure for my
I'll show
Unity
it to you.
project. And I open that up
with-
here
So it's
where I
gonna
change to the
change
folder,
to
to the drive, to the
directory
folder,
here,
and then
and
create
it'll
each
call
creature
write info
underneath.
bat with
And that
my
first
monster
C
letter,
is because they're
which is
just Monster A,
essentially my
Monster B,
project
Monster
name,
C.
except
So
that
that's
I'm just naming them
essentially
Monster A,
for
B,
the
C, D.
project name,
And then each
but it's just to simplify it.
model underneath there. So it'll create my, I've already done it, content for each model, and then within each it'll have its
And it'll
things,
create
it'll
the
build
mesh
info
material
file,
texture
and
folder.
copy my
It'll
portrait.
create the info text
I
file
have
with the creature name,
temp PNG
and
is
it'll
all of
copy
my
the
portraits
portrait because
with
I've
the
got all
same
my
names.
portraits in the temp PNG folder.
Write it. Probably
And
already
write
have it open.
info
Write info.
as the
So
project.
my project folder here is.
and that %1 is
Monster
taking the letter for
ABCD.
Monster A, Monster B,
Now I could have done the whole name
and
there.
then %2 is the creature
down
name.
here in my group name for my info file and my
Plus,
tags. I also have that Monster.
Actually, I do
ABCD.
have
So if you
Monster
had the whole name
%1 in
there,
both
it
of
would
those
put
spots. I could
that
take that
whole
out and
name
just
as
put the whole
your
project name as %1.
group, which
But your group name,
isn't a
you
problem,
want
but just saying, you don't want each
a group
model
of
to be
creatures
its
in
own
there. You
group.
don't want
You want to have
each creature
a
in its
group
own group name.
and then your models within that group. My PNG folder is where my
And so this will
portraits
make the
are.
directory.
They're already set to 128, 128
and then-
PNGs. And so I will make my
Yes.
folders, which is going
I don't
to be
actually have the create project folder in here because I do the make project first, which is a separate batch file.
Oh yeah, because project.
And
I've
so
already
this
got
creates
my
each
assets
creature
content
underneath that,
there. Now that
and then creates the info file,
yeah, my
copies
make
over the
project
portrait, names it
is going to
portrait.png.
create come back up the main project folder, and then within that it'll create the assets
Now-
content under.
I'll pause here. The assets folder, when we get into make project, it copies that from a template. It creates the logs empty. And then all these others are symbolic links to the template because Unity needs those files, but I don't need, there's 16,000 files in there, and I don't need each individual file, multiple copies for every project. I have the one
and then the
copy
logs
in
folder, and then
template,
all
and
these
then I
other ones
point to
are
those
symbolic
folders,
links to
and
my template,
Unity's perfectly happy because Windows redirects to there,
has all the stuff
and it
that
finds the files it's
Unity
looking for.
needs, because there's
But
16,000
I've got
files.
one copy of those
and I don't
files
want to
instead
copy
of
those 16,000 files
26 or
on
27
my disk for each
if I had 26 letters and a template folder.
for each project. And so it'll delete the info text underneath that model if it already
Yeah,
exists.
so this is the creature
and then it
info
will
file,
create that
and it's got
info
all the
text.
contents.
Now,
And I'll go pull one up.
assets, content, Celestial King, info text. It's going to say.
So he's got his Celestial King, he's got his
creature, blah,
Monster
blah, blah.
C.
And then it will copy the portrait
And then it's going to copy
For
that Celestial King
Celestial
PNG,
King, and it'll name
portrait
it
into the portrait
portrait.png.
PNG.
Make project just in case you want to
And
see
then
that.
it says the make project,
Creating
where it'll
those
go
symbolic links for those folders.
to the drive, to the
And it copies that asset
projects folder, make
structure,
the project, whatever I feed into it,
and then makes directory logs because it's empty.
change into that
Now,
directory,
template
create all the
logs does
symbolic
have some
links,
files in
copy
it
over
from
the
when I ran
assets,
the
and then
first
create
time.
the logs.
But they're not important. And yeah, he's gonna change to my destination Unity projects. Make directory my project name, that whole monster C, because this one takes the whole name.
Between those two, create the project, and then create all the creatures underneath.
I think I just run that from the command line.
And then the
Sure,
copy
it'll take
to
the
A,
whole
copy to B will
monster
copy
C,
all of the
and then
asset
change
bundles
directory into it
to
create all
the
those.
plugins folder
This is to create my guys
when
underneath
after
it,
I've created
classes,
them all.
and the info files. Now, if I come out of here, go ahead and save. Unity monster C.
First time you need
The
to
first time you need to click
hit the
up
drop
here
down
and say
here, add
to
project from
disk.
disk to point to your
Add
project folder,
from disk and point to it, and then it'll
and
show
that'll
up in
add
the
it to
list.
the list here. You can open it up,
Now I will show,
and
because
I
I
believe
had
that
OBJs
I
for my
closed,
guys, and
because when you're doing a
they're all
bunch of
already
these at the
sized
same
with
time,
the
it's better to keep Blender open.
human size
But
box.
I close and bring in
the
Celestial King to show
I-
how to set up the windows and do everything
Whoops.
fresh.
I could close and come back in, but same difference.
You can
Delete
delete your
box,
cube, delete your light, delete your camera, file, import OBJ. Now if there's something else, you can obviously,
here. I don't think I can move them from here.
and what I'll do here is go out to the folder and move my B's out of the way
Get all my B's out of the way.
to simplify life,
simple,
so you don't have to scroll past,
because you don't want to scroll past them every time.
because otherwise every time you open you're scrolling down. And so once you're done with something, move it out of the way.
Alright.
You can delete this
Like I said,
cube,
that cube,
because that was
you could
for
leave
the
it,
old
but it's
import
just,
in order to get my color to stick.
what is it, I guess 8 vertices and 6 faces that
But
you
now
won't
in order
need
to
in your
get the
model.
color to stick, you want to select your model, go to the
Here,
textures,
texture,
and
clean up this.
I'll clean up the material name.
Now.
You don't need
the
to,
corner
but
here
it's
you
going to
can
be
grab,
cleaner when it comes into
drag it over,
Unity.
split your window.
Let me go back here a
into
second.
Image editor now.
So in Blender, to get my windows set up, you want to click in the very corner
In
and
the corner
drag,
here you can grab and drag it over,
and
to
that'll split your window. And then
Come
go
to
to Image Editor,
editor,
go to Paint,
paint.
and say View,
I want to view
Toolbar, or Tool Settings, because that'll get your primary or your
Now, I don't have
foreground
any
color,
images yet, so
and
new,
you're going to need to create a new image, call it text for texture, set it to 1 pixel by 1 pixel,
by 1 pixel.
turn off the alpha
delete
channel,
alpha.
and say OK,
Okay,
and then
it's
mouse
super
wheel
tiny.
up in order to
Mouse
zoom
wheel
in,
up. As you can see, my
and you can
radius
change your
is
radius.
entirely overkill.
You don't need to,
Come in
just to
here,
show that it was 1 pixel.
copy.
You want to copy your
Now,
color,
You could do
set
this in a
your
different order. I just prefer to do it while
material
I'm over here.
to come from an image,
Text.
texture, and then
in
change your
here,
foreground color,
change my
paste,
color. I enter out of that just to
and
save a
just
keystroke.
click to paint your color.
Save a mouse click. Paste your
Go
color
up
in.
to image,
Now,
save,
I believe you
and
need
save it into
to
that
save
same
this.
folder.
Pretty sure
I
it doesn't work
believe
if you don't
that
do
it will not attach
And so I
the
save it in that folder, and I name them all text just so I don't have to rename it every
texture
time. 'cause if I name it
file
for the
to
model,
the FBX if you
it's
have
just
not
more
saved it.
keystrokes I got to do. Now, I can come up here and copy the name.
and then you can copy the object
Make my
name
life a little easier.
so that when
export
you
FBX,
export FBX,
and
you can paste it.
because I did new,
And
lost
I've got
the
my
folder. It'll remember
incoming
the
folder and
from now on.
outgoing folder saved to bookmarks just to
Paste.
simplify life. Change your path
Otherwise, you
mode to
gotta type the
copy.
name. Change this to path mode to
Activate
copy.
the icon next to it.
Activate the icon.
Your
Selected
limit
object.
to selected objects. Apply transforms and export.
Now, did I move? No. Oh,
And
yeah, I
then
did.
I've moved
Moved all
my
the other-
B
the Bs
files
out
out of that folder.
Alright, so you see,
to simplify
everything's
life.
Good. Export. Oh, I just did that.
And here I accidentally
Don't
went
need to
told
do
it,
it again.
almost told it to export again.
And here, Celestial King. Here's the
Realized,
empty
oh yeah, I
folders.
just did that, so I
So
didn't
when
need
I
to.
come import
Import new
new
asset.
asset. It's gonna
Now
remember where you last
it's
were, and that's not where I
easier
wanna
in
be.
here because
wanna
it'll
be where
remember
I
the
last
last
imported from.
folder that you touched.
So
And so if you
Rewrite.
import a bunch, it'll keep you in
no
that
rig,
folder.
no animation.
And so I'll back up
my
again
text
here.
will
Set the
Read
read write,
no rig,
set the rig
no
to none,
animation.
the animation to none,
my texture.
pull in the texture, pull in the material.
Sometimes you'll see the window there when it's importing it. Now you can see the texture folder has
Oh,
something in
that
it.
was showing that the
Materials,
texture
and
folder
maybe
is
that
solid, and the material
folder's
folder,
gonna have
once you
something
do
in
it, is solid.
Textures, I believe,
Now the texture does have a read write.
do have a read
You
write.
don't need to worry about that one.
activate that.
Drag your mesh into the scene.
Want to drag them up into the scene. Now sometimes
And then
you'll get a no if you drag left
I'm
and
showing
right.
here that
Then it'll let
sometimes
you drop it in
that
there. I'm gonna
no
escape
symbol
so
will
because I
show up.
already did it. And you can see
but
this
you
is
just
white.
drag left and right, and then
When
it'll
I
let you
drag
drop it in
down
there.
to my
Drag
folder,
your model
and
from the
prefab,
scene
it'll turn
down
blue.
and create your
Rename
prefab.
my prefab.
Rename your prefab,
Now the reason for renaming is
and
that
remember
if,
to copy
now,
the name.
not so much for Celestial King, but if you have Bugbear
So sometimes
and
click
somebody
back
else
into
has
it, say
Bugbear,
copy
those
again.
names are going to collide in the add-ons in TaleSpire, and so if you prefix all of everything that you would create,
Do new.
oh, I didn't expect those to stay.
Now this one was strange because the B's are still there,
It's kind of
and
weird. that these are
normally
here.
I'm not used to seeing that.
New, and I
Yeah,
forgot
this
that-
is because I
see,
forgot to copy the name.
sometimes that'll bug
and
you,
it won't let
you
me type in
but
that
it'll let
box.
you paste. And now I don't want.
And
I
it won't
can't
let me backspace that box.
either, which is why you want to
So you come in here,
this name,
copy, say new,
new,
paste,
paste
and then
that
you're good
in,
to go. And it's going to lowercase them, but that's okay.
set my portrait.
Set your
Now
portrait
this
to your asset bundle.
Order isn't
Set your compression
important
to
for how
none.
you do that. It's just the order that I do it in. So I do portrait because I don't
And
want to
your read
forget
write.
to reassign.
And
Now,
apply.
if you don't apply and you click out here,
If you
it's
don't
gonna
apply, you're
say
going to
you
get
need
this
to
pop-up
apply.
saying you made
If
changes.
you hit that apply, it just kind of saves you that pop-up.
The info to the bundle,
King,
and then set your
set
folders,
3 folders
to the
Celestial
bundle.
King, and then you're good. I can
and then you can build.
come out here.
And I'm going to show
You'll
that
see
the
that in
asset
my
bundles
assets, I've got my
isn't there.
content, but I don't have that asset bundle.
And so when you build asset bundles, it'll create that folder structure underneath
Build asset bundles.
and build your bundle inside of it.
I will now have asset bundles. And it's only going to have that one mini in there.
And that's the guy you need to copy.
Now I guess if I
But it's a whole lot simpler if
click
you have a set of them.
and that's because
And
that
that's
asset
Unity
bundles
creating
will
its
show up
meta
under
file
here.
because it saw a file
And so
underneath.
that is Unity going out and creating that meta file. Now, right now they're both 207. If I wait and build again, it should.
I don't remember
overwrite
what I'm
this, and I
babbling
don't
about
know
here.
that it always does.
But I think I'm going to go up and create my copy to C batch
I
file.
could run another guy in while I wait for the time to change. And So yeah, I just delete that.
Oh,
Import
I'm showing that when you
J,
rebuild the asset
next
bundle,
guy.
it doesn't always overwrite. So sometimes you want to go into there and
For some
delete the
reason, I don't know
minis
why I
folder.
click on that.
And
It's
so
a totally
I'm working on the
unnecessary
next model while I wait for the time to change so that you can tell
click.
whether
Copy.
it built or not.
And now you'll see when I come in here, it's going to be
So
pink.
image.
Oh, no, it's black.
Now, my texture color there is black from
Interesting.
when it first created the texture. But
And
again, the color that it shows in there doesn't matter as long as you color it here
X.
on the
And
left
it'll
side.
remember my folder. It'll remember my options
And your
here. So until you
settings will
close,
stay as
you're
long
good
as
to
you
just
keep
keep
Blender
going.
open.
And so yeah, sometimes I'll just run
And
through
so
a
I
bunch of these.
exported the FBX. Now, this time I made an error, which is
Now,
the
I've
only time
noticed
that I did it
if you have
while
a
I
bunch
was
out
recording.
there and you
And so I
import,
come in here, say import, go to my FBX folder,
say FBX.
and I do not have a Centaur.
Why?
And that is because when I exported, I was talking and did not rename. And so I come in here and do export again.
Forgot to save this.
I also forgot to save my
Save
image.
as Centaur. Save. Export FBX.
And so it's got
And
Celestial
I
King down at the
overwrote
bottom. And so
because I
when I
didn't rename
exported, I overwrote my file.
That is what happened.
So I fix that, save it to Centaur, and delete Celestial
That's
King
bad.
because it's not correct anyway. And so you
That's
come
why you
back,
gotta pay attention to what
model,
you're
read only.
That is the first
I
time
keep
I've
wanting
done
to say
that
read
actually.
only. Read write. Rig to none, animation to none. Bring in the texture.
Too busy talking,
Bring in
not busy
material.
thinking.
Drag it into
Drag 'em
scene.
Drag
Drag
them
it
down.
down to the folder.
Enter.
And create prefab. Rename it.
Copy.
Copy paste the new asset.
Wonder if I, nah, I thought I did close and then open. I don't know why. I still see the bees. That's the first time I've ever had the old
Portrait to the
groups up
bundle.
here. Asset bundles.
Compression
But
none.
the one you want is always at the bottom
right.
if you're going in order. So
And if you don't apply, you'll get the pop up.
first we apply.
Set your info. Set your folders.
Or so we will
And then
build.
we build assets.
Now I'm looking at that. Okay, so I'm high enough.
To
That's
asset bundle, custom
as
data.
deep in as you want to be. I usually come all the way out. And so I've got my Centaur. I've got my guy. He is
Is
still
not
207.
Bill 207.
And my Centaur
And so if you
is 210. And
210.
that's why if you delete minis
delete
and then build
minis
asset bundles,
and tell it to build the bundle,
you know they're getting
it'll
refreshed.
recreate those files underneath.
And then got my, now this do it is the create folders underneath my project. The copy,
But if I
so if I copy paste,
copy V, copy
rename,
the copy to,
C,
rename it to C,
right click,
and then edit that,
add, and so
And
this I can change to C.
change my
And that's
project
gonna
name,
For my project, that's going to build my
and that'll
project.
flow through from there. And then
My
I've got all these
Project
features,
name underneath
and I
here.
want to copy those up to Monster
I
C.
should actually do the create that
So,
folder just in case it doesn't
I need
exist.
to bring in those creature names.
And then this piece is
And
always going to be
That's
the
showing
same.
that all the destination is the
piece
same.
that's going to change is this, which if I
And so I will alt copy
these,
the block,
come down here,
come in here and push down.
it's going to be a list.
And you need to size that big enough to fit your block, because otherwise when you paste it's going to
And I can
push each line over.
grab one of these,
And then I'll alt highlight
highlight,
and paste,
paste.
the prefix,
and then essentially
and then you
copy.
just copy
Now,
paste.
If I cut,
Now, if you
paste,
cut
it's easier
paste,
to
it's easier to keep track because it's going
maintain
to
where you're at.
remove So yes, you should cut paste so that you don't need to remember where you left off.
And we'll just grab
So
some
I'll
of
copy
these.
one line up, paste 4 of them, approximately.
A little easier
And
when
do
they're
some
all
more
nice
cut
and lined up.
pastes. And that's how you create this. You could do it
They're
different
good.
ways, but this isn't complicated. And then what I'll do is about every 4, I'll go paste these so that you don't need to
Something like this
scroll
to
too
make it
far.
a little simpler.
So that'll simplify the cut and
I like
paste.
to do
Now, as you see there, and I think I do it again just to explain it,
Right side
if you
first,
do the right side
because the left
first,
side isn't
the
gonna move.
left
If you do
side
the left
doesn't
side
move.
first, the
If
right
you do the
side
left
shifts.
side first, it shifts the whole line. So it's a whole lot easier
Just again, another thing that makes
to
life a little easier.
paste over the right piece first, because that left
Now,
piece will stay where it is, and
Probably
it's
it would
easy
be
to
easiest
aim
if
at
I
it.
just made one bundle.
If you're doing the left side
Because then you're
first,
only
the
copying
whole
one
line
file.
shifts on you, and then you might miss when you
Got
try
the
to move the
individuals
mouse
just
to the right side, and you gotta
have everything modular.
move the mouse different lengths depending on the length of whatever it is you're pasting. So it's a lot easier to do that right side and then do the left side, and you can move the same amount. Now here I'm checking the name to make sure,
whether
can I
could
just
save, or
save,
needed to save as.
or do I need to save as? Because if you're editing
That gets you in
your
trouble a lot.
B file and you save, you're going to stomp all over it.
I think that's everything I wanted to show. If I
And so that's
right now
another
I've got
reason
nothing up
why
there.
I
So if I run,
rename the file or copy the file
see,
and rename it in the
Now,
process.
because I've got all these names in here where I don't
Because
have
I've got all these creatures I
asset
haven't
bundles
touched yet, you're
I
going to
can
get all
scroll
these
way
files
over and
not
I can see the
found.
2
But the
copies.
top 2 it did
And so I've
find,
got my custom
and
data
created the
minis,
folder
they're in
structure
there.
and copied them in.
If I get out of the way, now if you're in the folders,
And so then when you
it
run
tries to
R2modman,
do
you want to
this
make sure you're
and
out of that folder.
rename thing to assets, it can't do that, and so your model will not come in.
So I go up to the plugins folder, run it.
You'll also
And
get a
it'll
red
rename
blob in
things to
here saying
assets.
you can't rename the folder.
Now, if you are in the folder and you can't rename, up in this text or the log in the background, the blob of text where about 8 lines are going to complain saying, I can't rename the folder. You need to get out of the way. So here I just create a separation and then clean up this a little bit. And I can skip a little ahead there.
Make it tidy. Okay. Get out of that. Get out of that.
Get out of build mode, space O, and I'm going to have a monster C now.
Got my monster C.
So I can drop them in.
If your portrait is not read-write, your portrait
Now,
won't come in, you'll get an unhappy
here
face.
I do have the centaur as,
If your
because right now
portrait
everything is just a
not
5-foot
128 by
base,
128, I imagine the same thing happens.
and then I can
never
go through and tweak
ran
my
into that.
info files in order to say this one should be 2 blocks by 2 blocks.
B's. Got my A's, which I should move in order to.
So a lot of
smoosh
it I
down.
just brought in as a 1x1 so that you can scale it up if you need to or scale it down. But a lot of them I have them sized where they're kind of a 10-foot, large creature, even when you just bring it in as a 1 scale.
And so what I
So I'm not
intend
sure
to do in this one
that I'll mess with that or not,
is have
but
A's,
I could
B's, C's,
to give it a
keep
larger
going. I'll
base.
Probably go back to a second layer at some point. Maybe
But that was
3,
pretty much it. I've got my A's, B's, and
but just
started
to have all
my
the models
C's.
in there, and you can come in and check them out.
and they all look pretty good. The portraits have the what is it, vertex count in K. So it'll say 32K or something like that. Now the portraits are small because they were from 700 by 600 is how I originally had them. So I don't know. Yeah, he's 32K. He's 21, I believe. So it is readable, but not easily readable. These names over here is the model creator. So it's MZ4250. A lot of these are his. I'm a patron and plan to continue to be a patron because he makes good models. I don't know if there are any Duncan Shadow, but I like his models too. That is pretty much it. Let me, stop blinding you and stop